सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
The men gently floated down the Rupsa River from the Khulna launch dock, past the burning villages of Labanchor and Matha Bhanja, carried by the tides together with the bodies of the dead. The great river, Mohandar Dhali would tell investigators, had turned red, dyed by the blood of the victims of the savage anti-Hindu massacre that tore through Bangladesh in 1964. For days afterwards, he testified, dead bodies were seen at every band and curve of the river, all through its course downwards. Last week, mobs burned down Hindu-owned homes and businesses in Nahel's Sahapada and vandalized local temples after a teenager posted content critical of Islam on Facebook. There have been a string of similar mob assaults in recent months, beginning from Durga Puja last autumn when 7 people were killed. An independent watchdog, the Eno Salish Kendra, estimates that there have been more than 3,600 attacks on Hindus since 2013. That year, Bangladesh's largest Islamist group, the Jamaat-e-Islami, unleashed large-scale communal attacks to protest the conviction of its leader, Dilawar Hussain Saidi, for war crimes he committed in the Liberation Campaign of 1971. Even though Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and her government have sought to stamp out this violence, Islamism remains an entrenched part of Bangladesh's political landscape. The regime's authoritarian policies, driven in part by its effort to stamp out jihadism, ended up undermining its legitimacy and forcing it into an unhappy compromise with competing Islamist groups. From its famine-ravaged, blood-soaked birth, Bangladesh has succeeded in transforming itself into one of the region's most vibrant economies. Fundamentalism, though, remains a powerful force, threatening to undo the country's hard-won gains. From the moment of independence, Eastern Bengal Hindus became subjects to genocidal violence. 1.5 million refugees came to India in 1950, more than 600,000 in 1951-52, and another 1.6 million from 1953 to 1956. Largely landless Muslims also streamed to the east, but didn't leave behind properties that could be used for rehabilitating the incoming Hindus. India considered war to seize territory in Khulna and Jessore, the historian Pallavi Raghavan has recorded, only to realize war would mean even more refugees. The violence slowly diminished from the mid-1950s, but political leaders had learned that communalism could be used for electoral gains as well as personal profit. In 1962, violence against Hindus in Rajshahi district sent 35,000 refugees into West Bengal and Assam. Their lands were often seized by local politicians and used as a tool to dispense patronage to their followers. Then, in the winter of 1963, violence erupted in Kashmir after a religious relic was found missing from the Hazrat Bal shrine. The Indian state disintegrated, with protesters setting up what one contemporary observer described as an unauthorized parallel administration controlling traffic, commerce and prices. The media in Pakistan, though, claimed that Muslims were being massacred from Kashmir to Kolkata. The Dhaka newspaper Azad, a report by the Indian Commission of Jurists recorded in 1964, declared that Hindus are not reliable. They can kill their mothers and fathers. Whenever opportunity will offer itself, they will throttle the Muslims to death. Pakistan's Federal Communications Minister, Abdul Sabur Khan, led the mobs that acted on these words in January 1964. Leaflets were distributed by his supporters, the commission was told, demanding Hindus leave East Pakistan. From eyewitness testimony, it is clear he used the opportunity to seize land from the fleeing community. Faced with growing opposition from 1970, the Pakistani authorities turned to communal leaders to form an institutionalized killing machine to fight against Bangladesh nationalism. The only people who came forward were the rightists, former Pakistan Army Brigadier Siddiq Salik wrote in his memoirs. Figures like Sabur, he wrote, recruited volunteers for two death squads, Al-Badr and Al-Sham. In the name of Islam and Pakistan, the officer observed, the volunteers were prepared to risk everything. Led by the Jamaat-e-Islami politician Matiur Rahman Nizami, Al-Badr engaged in the killings of Bangladesh nationalists and also used violence to force Hindus to flee the country. Formed in 1953 by the Islamist ideologue Abul Ala Maududi, the Jamaat-e-Islami sought to build Pakistan into a Sharia-governed state. The organization had little electoral success, political scientist Sayyid Wali Nasser has observed, but acquired outsized influence in shaping the constitution and norms of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Like Pakistan itself, the East Pakistan Jamaat-e-Islami was annihilated in 1971, but it re-emerged under the regime of Major General Ziaur Rahman, who soon staged a coup. His successor, General H.M. Ershad, even appointed two 1971 war criminals, Abdul Manan and Salahuddin Qadir Chaudhry, to cabinet positions. Khan, the perpetrator of the 1964 riots, was amnestied in 1972 for his war crimes and went on to stage a triumphant electoral comeback. From 2001 to 2006, the Jamaat-e-Islami allied with the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, BNP, and joined the right-wing coalition that ruled Bangladesh. The Jamaat used its control of the Social Welfare Ministry as well as its hold on the private sector Islami Bank to build a sprawling network of patronage. The 2008 election saw the BNP Jamaat elections defeated on the back of a youth vote that demanded accountability for the liberation war criminals. Islamism, though, was to prove resilient. Two entwined jihadist currents, the work of scholar Ali Riaz shows, had been nurtured under the shade of military authoritarianism in Bangladesh. The first were volunteers who had travelled to Afghanistan to fight against the Soviet Union and then returned home to form the Harkatul Jihad Islami in Bangladesh. The Harkatul Jihad Islami focused on fighting India and Myanmar. But in 1998, a second generation of jihadis formed the Jamaatul Mujahideen Bangladesh. This new group sought to transform Bangladesh itself into an Islamic state. Even though the Jamaatul Mujahideen was ruthlessly suppressed, new tendencies emerged. Led by elements of the Bangladeshi diaspora in the United Kingdom, the Hizb ut-Tahrir brought ideas of a global caliphate to the country's elite university campuses. The Al-Qaeda-affiliated Ansarullah Bangla team began assassinating progressive activists and atheists. Islamic State-inspired groups formed a fifth circle of jihadism in 2015. Figures show Bangladesh succeeded in defending itself. Terrorism fatalities have actually fallen steadily since 2014, but the victory came at a price. To insulate itself from attacks by the jihadists and the Jamaat-e-Islami, Prime Minister Hasina's government allied with the Hifazat-e-Islami Bangladesh, a movement of clerics and students in the country's madrasas and seminaries. The Hifazat emerged on a platform of demands which included the incorporation of Islamic phrasing into the constitution, gender segregation in public places, and capital punishment for blasphemy. These ideas ate into the Jamaat-e-Islami constituency, which was useful from the ruling party's point of view. Early on, Prime Minister Hasina conceded several Hifazat demands. She removed the sari-clad Lady of Justice statue from in front of the Supreme Court, which Hifazat clerics had claimed was heretical. The government also recognized seminary qualifications as equivalent to university degrees and made several religion-inspired amendments to school textbooks. The Awami League also purged anti-religious politicians from its ranks. Four-time Member of Parliament Abdul Latif Siddiqui, for example, was expelled from the ruling party after he announced his belief publicly that the Hajj pilgrimage was a waste of time. Inevitably, though, confrontation built up with the government as the clerics centered power. Hifazat clerics began claiming that statues of the Bangladesh founding father, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the Prime Minister's father, be brought down, arguing they constituted a form of idol worship. Then, the following year, Hifazat politicians led violent protests against visiting Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The chauvinist ideas of the Hifazat, though, have proved hard to crush. Scholars Mubashir Hassan and Jeffrey MacDonald have noted that the pandemic contributed to the rising tide of Islamism. Islamist propagandists have adroitly used digital media to disseminate claims that COVID was divine punishment for the government's anti-Islamic policies and called for it to be replaced with a Sharia-based state. Anti-Muslim polemics and violence have also been used to justify and legitimize retaliatory violence against Hindus. It's even been used to attack the very idea of secularism in Bangladesh, the country's founding ideology. The country's experience holds up a mirror to India, showing what happens to polities that fail to confront communalism. I'm Praveen Swami, and I'm National Security Editor of ThePrint.